The CEO of Hale Industries was drunk, crying in the passenger seat of a maintenance supervisor's decade-old Honda, and Ethan Cole had absolutely no idea what he was supposed to do about it. Victoria Hale, the woman whose signature could end careers, whose silence in meetings made executives sweat, was mascara-streaked and slurring about how nobody actually liked her. And he couldn't just leave her like this. Not when she could barely stand. Not when everyone else at that holiday party had pretended not to notice. So he made a choice that would change everything. He took her home. Not to her penthouse, to his. If you want to see how one unexpected decision can completely transform two broken lives, stay with me until the end, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The conference room on the 14th floor of Hale Industries still smelled like catered food and desperation at 11:30 p.m. Ethan Cole stood near the exit, watching the last few stragglers from the holiday party stumble toward the elevators, their laughter echoing off the glass walls. He'd come to these things for years now, not because he enjoyed them, but because showing up mattered, because being invisible was easier when you at least made an appearance first. He was reaching for his jacket when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong in a room full of expensive furniture and city views. Quiet crying, muffled but unmistakable. Ethan paused. The smart thing would be to leave. Whatever was happening wasn't his business. He was maintenance, not management. He fixed broken things, HVAC systems, flickering lights, jammed doors. Not people. But he didn't leave. He followed the sound past the buffet table, around a decorative pillar, to where Victoria Hale sat alone on a leather bench near the windows. Her shoes were off. Her carefully styled hair had come partially undone, and she was holding an empty wine glass like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the chair. "Ms. Hale?" She looked up, and for a second she didn't seem to recognize him. Then her eyes focused, barely, and she laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. "Oh, you." She waved the glass vaguely in his direction. "The guy who fixed the elevator last month. Ethan Cole. Yes, ma'am. Don't call me ma'am. Makes me sound old." She tried to stand, wobbled, and sat back down hard. Shit. Ethan glanced toward the elevators. Empty hallway. Everyone else had already left, probably assuming someone else would handle this. That's how it always worked. Everyone assumed someone else would step up. "Can I call someone for you?" he asked carefully. "A driver? Family?" Victoria laughed again, sharper this time. "A driver. Right, because Martin definitely wants to see his boss like this." She gestured at herself, the wine glass nearly slipping from her fingers. "And family? That's hilarious. You're funny, Ethan Cole." He wasn't trying to be funny. He was trying to figure out what the hell to do. She tilted her head back against the window, eyes closing. "You know what the worst part is? I threw this whole stupid party. Spent God knows how much money on shrimp nobody ate and wine everyone drank too much of. And not one person stayed to talk to me. Not one. Maybe they thought you wanted space." "Space?" She opened her eyes, staring at the ceiling. "I have so much space I could scream in my apartment and nobody would hear me. Space isn't the problem." Ethan stood there, jacket in hand, weighing his options. He could call building security. Let them handle it. That's what he should do. Victoria Hale wasn't his responsibility. She was the CEO of a company that employed 3,000 people. She had resources, people whose actual job was to manage situations like this. But then she tried to stand again, and this time her legs barely held her. "Okay," Ethan said quietly, moving forward. "Let's get you home." "I can walk." "I can see that." She shot him a look that probably would have been withering if she wasn't actively leaning on the bench for balance. "Are you being sarcastic with me?" "No, ma'am." "I said don't—" She stopped, swaying slightly. "Fine. Whatever. Just get me to the lobby. I'll figure it out from there." She didn't figure it out from there. By the time they reached the parking garage, it was clear she wasn't in any condition to give directions, let alone go home alone. Ethan had gotten her address from her fumbling attempts to unlock her phone, some high-rise downtown, 40 minutes away in traffic. But when he'd asked for her keys, she just stared at him like the question was in another language. "I don't have keys," she'd said. "I have a code, but I can't remember." She'd trailed off, leaning against his car, and that's when he'd made the decision. Not the smart decision, not the safe decision, but the only one that felt right. Change of plans, he'd said. Now she was in his passenger seat, head against the window, humming something off-key while he drove through the mostly empty streets toward his neighborhood. The clock on the dashboard read 12:17 a.m. Lily would be asleep. Mrs. Chen from next door had been watching her, same as always when he worked late. He'd have to wake her up, apologize for the hour, figure out how to explain why his CEO was passed out in his car. This was a terrible idea. Victoria stirred as he pulled into his apartment complex parking lot. "This isn't downtown." "No," Ethan said. "It's not." She blinked at the modest 3-story building, at the playground visible in the courtyard, at the Christmas lights someone had strung along their balcony railing. "Where are we?" "Somewhere safe." He turned off the engine. "Can you walk?" "I already told you I can walk." "Right." It took 3 tries to get her out of the car and another 2 minutes to make it to his apartment door. She wasn't heavy, but she also wasn't particularly coordinated, and by the time he got the door unlocked, she was leaning most of her weight against him. Mrs. Chen appeared in the hallway almost immediately, her expression shifting from concern to confusion to something that might have been amusement. "Ethan?" "I know," he said quietly. "Long story. Is Lily okay?" "Sound asleep. Has been since 8:30. Mrs. Chen's gaze flickered to Victoria, who was now staring at a crayon drawing taped to the wall near the door. "Should I stay?" "No, I've got it. Thank you. Really." Mrs. Chen nodded slowly, gathering her coat. She paused at the door. "Ethan, be careful." "I'm always careful." "That's not what I mean." After she left, Ethan guided Victoria to the couch. She sank into it like her bones had given up, kicking off her remaining shoe and pulling her legs up underneath her. For a moment she just sat there, looking around his small living room with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You have a kid," she said. "Lily. She's 7. Victoria's gaze landed on the photo on the side table. Ethan and Lily at the park last summer, both of them grinning at the camera. Next to it, partially obscured, was an older photo. Wedding day. Sarah's smile bright enough to light up the frame. "And a wife?" "Had one." The words came out flat. Automatic. "She died 3 years ago." Victoria's eyes widened slightly, some of the fog clearing. "I'm sorry." "It's okay." "It's not okay? That's a terrible thing to say." "It's okay. Nothing about that is okay." Ethan didn't argue. He just went to the kitchen and filled a glass with water, bringing it back to her. "Drink this." She took it, but didn't drink. "Why did you bring me here?" "Because you couldn't remember your door code, and you shouldn't be alone right now." "You don't even know me." "I know you're drunk and upset. That's enough." She stared at him for a long moment, something shifting behind her eyes. Then she drank the water, all of it, and set the glass down carefully on the coffee table. "I'm not a good person, Ethan Cole. I don't think that's true." "You don't know me," she repeated, but quieter this time, almost like she wanted him to disagree again. He sat down in the chair across from her, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. "You threw a party for your employees. You stayed until almost midnight, even though you clearly weren't having a good time. And you're sitting here telling me you're not a good person. Doesn't really add up." "I stayed because I didn't want to go home." "Why not?" Victoria looked away toward the darkened hallway where Lily's room was. "Because there's nothing there. Just space. Expensive, empty space." The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of someone's TV through the walls. Ethan had spent 3 years learning to live with silence, to find comfort in the routines that kept him moving forward. Work, Lily's school schedule, grocery shopping on Thursdays. This apartment wasn't much, but it was full of small moments that meant something. Lily's drawings on the fridge. The blanket Sarah had knitted still draped over the back of the couch. The scuff marks near the door from countless arrivals and departures. Victoria was still looking at the photos. "How do you do it?" "Do what?" "Keep going after something like that." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "You don't have a choice. You just keep going because someone needs you to." "Must be nice," Victoria said softly. "Having someone who needs you." Before Ethan could respond, a small voice came from the hallway. "Dad?" Lily stood in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes, her stuffed rabbit dangling from one hand. She looked at Ethan, then at Victoria, then back at Ethan, with the kind of curiosity only a 7-year-old could manage at nearly 1 in the morning. "Hey, sweetheart." Ethan stood quickly. "What are you doing up?" "I heard voices." Lily padded into the room, completely unfazed by the stranger on their couch. "Who's that?" Victoria had gone very still, staring at Lily like she wasn't quite sure children were real. "This is Ms. Hale," Ethan said. "She works at my company. She's not feeling well, so she's staying here tonight." Lily tilted her head. "Are you sick?" Victoria blinked. Yes, something like that. My dad makes really good soup when I'm sick, but it's probably too late for soup now." Lily climbed onto the arm of Ethan's chair, still holding her rabbit. "Do you have kids?" "Lily?" Ethan started. "No," Victoria said quietly. "I don't." "Oh. Do you want kids?" "I don't know. I never really thought about it." Lily considered this with the seriousness of someone weighing a major philosophical question. "I think you should. Kids are pretty good, except when they're annoying. My friend Marcus is annoying sometimes, but mostly kids are okay." Despite everything, Victoria almost smiled. "Good to know." "All right, sweetheart." Ethan gently guided Lily toward the hallway. "Back to bed. School tomorrow. Can Ms. Hale read me a story?" "Ms. Hale needs to rest." "I don't mind," Victoria said suddenly. Both Ethan and Lily turned to look at her. She looked as surprised as they did. "I mean, if it's okay, I'm probably not good at it, but I could try." Lily's face lit up. "Really?" Ethan wanted to say no, wanted to keep his daughter and his work life in separate universes, the way he always had. But Victoria was looking at Lily with something that wasn't quite hope, but wasn't far from it either. And Lily was already heading down the hall, chattering about which book they should pick. "You don't have to," he said quietly. "I know." Victoria stood, steadier now than she'd been before. "But maybe I want to." Ethan watched them disappear into Lily's room, heard his daughter's excited voice explaining the plot of whatever book she'd chosen, and tried to figure out what the hell was happening. This wasn't how tonight was supposed to go. He was supposed to go to the party, stay just long enough to be noticed, then come home and fall asleep watching whatever was on TV. Simple, predictable, safe. Instead, his CEO was reading bedtime stories to his daughter at 1 in the morning, and nothing about this made any sense. He cleaned up the water glass, checked the locks on the door, and tried not to think about how Mrs. Chen's warning had sounded less like concern and more like prophecy. Be careful. He was being careful. This was just one night. By tomorrow morning, everything would go back to normal. Victoria would go home, he'd go to work, and this whole strange evening would fade into one of those stories you told yourself late at night when you couldn't sleep. Except when he checked on them 15 minutes later, Victoria was sitting on the edge of Lily's bed, book closed in her lap, talking quietly about something he couldn't quite hear. And Lily was listening with the kind of attention she usually reserved for the most important things in her world. When Victoria finally emerged, she looked different. Not sober. She was still clearly affected by the wine, but more present, more real. "She's asleep," Victoria said softly, pulling Lily's door mostly closed. "I think I bored her into unconsciousness." "I doubt that." They stood in the hallway, the apartment settling around them. Ethan grabbed spare blankets from the closet, an extra pillow. "You can take the couch. I'll be in my room if you need anything." Victoria accepted the blankets but didn't move. "Ethan, why did you really bring me here?" He thought about lying, about giving her the easy answer, but something about the way she was looking at him, like she actually wanted the truth, made him pause. "Because everyone else left you there," he said simply. And that didn't seem right. Victoria's expression shifted. For a second, he thought she might cry again. Instead, she just nodded. "Thank you. Get some rest." He left her there, went to his room, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Down the hall, he could hear Victoria settling onto the couch, the rustle of blankets, the creak of old springs. This was temporary. Tomorrow she'd be gone and everything would go back to the way it was supposed to be. But as he finally drifted off to sleep, part of him already knew that wasn't true. Some decisions, no matter how small they seem in the moment, have a way of changing everything. Morning came too early, filtering through the thin curtains of Ethan's bedroom with the kind of pale winter light that made everything look washed out and tired. He woke to the sound of movement in the kitchen, which was wrong because he always woke before Lily, always had coffee started before she padded out in her pajamas asking what was for breakfast. Then he remembered. He sat up, running a hand through his hair, and checked the time. 6:45. Lily's alarm wouldn't go off for another 15 minutes. Whoever was in his kitchen, it wasn't his daughter. He found Victoria standing near the counter, still in yesterday's clothes, but looking significantly more composed than she had last night. She'd found the coffee maker, already brewing, and was studying the collection of Lily's artwork on the refrigerator with the focus of someone examining evidence. "Morning," Ethan said carefully. She turned and he caught something flash across her face. Embarrassment, maybe, or something closer to shame. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I woke up and couldn't remember where I was for a second. Then I saw your daughter's drawings, and it all came back. It's fine. You feeling okay?" "Like I made several terrible decisions last night." She touched her temple. "But I've been worse." Ethan poured himself coffee, offered her a cup. She accepted it, wrapping both hands around the mug like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "I should call a car," Victoria said. "Get out of your hair. You should have breakfast first." "I don't want to impose more than I already have." "You're not imposing." He opened the refrigerator, mentally cataloging what he had. Eggs, bread, some fruit Lily had been ignoring all week. Besides, Lily will be disappointed if you leave before she wakes up. She'll want to know if you're feeling better. Victoria's expression did something complicated. She's very direct. That's one word for it. Most kids are scared of me. Lily's not scared of much. Ethan pulled out the eggs, started heating a pan. Her mom was like that too, fearless, sometimes too fearless. Victoria was quiet for a moment, watching him work. "Can I ask what happened, or is that too personal?" "Car accident, drunk driver ran a red light." The words came out mechanical, same as they always did. Facts without feeling, because feeling made it harder. "She was coming home from her sister's place. Died in the ambulance." Jesus. Lily was 4, too young to really understand, old enough to know her mom wasn't coming back. He cracked eggs into the pan, focused on the sizzle and pop. For a while she'd ask when Mommy was coming home. Then one day she just stopped asking, started drawing pictures for her instead, leaves them around the apartment like Sarah might find them. That's heartbreaking. It's how she copes. Ethan flipped the eggs. Everyone copes differently. Victoria leaned against the counter, coffee mug still cradled in her hands. "How do you cope?" "Work, routine, making sure Lily's okay." He glanced at her. "Not particularly exciting." "Sounds stable." "Stable's good when you're raising a kid alone." "I wouldn't know." Something in her tone made him pause. "You said last night you don't have family." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful, measured. "My parents died when I was 23. Car accident, ironically. After that, it was just me and my career. I poured everything into the company, worked 80-hour weeks, climbed the ladder, became the youngest CEO in the company's history." She took a sip of coffee. "And now I'm 41 years old, sitting in a stranger's kitchen, realizing I have absolutely nothing outside of work. No partner, no kids, no friends, really. Just employees who are afraid of me and competitors who want me to fail. That why you drank so much last night. Part of it." She set the mug down. "The other part is that I looked around that party and realized everyone was pretending to have a good time because they had to. Not because they wanted to be there, not because they liked me, because it was obligatory. And I thought, this is my life. Obligatory interactions with people who would celebrate if I got hit by a bus." Ethan plated the eggs, added toast. "I don't think that's true. You don't know them." "I know they showed up. That counts for something." "Does it?" Victoria picked up her fork but didn't eat. "When's the last time someone showed up for you, Ethan? Not because they had to, because they wanted to." The question hit harder than he expected. He thought about Mrs. Chen, who watched Lily without complaint but mostly out of routine. About his sister who called every few weeks out of duty, about the other parents at Lily's school who were polite but distant, probably because they didn't know what to say to the widower dad. Been a while, he admitted. See? We're not that different. Before Ethan could respond, Lily appeared in the doorway, hair sticking up in 3 different directions, rabbit dragging on the floor behind her. "You're still here," she said it like Victoria had just performed a magic trick. Victoria's expression softened in a way Ethan hadn't seen before. "I'm still here. Are you feeling better?" "Much better, thank you." Lily climbed into her usual chair, eyeing the extra plate. "Are you having breakfast with us?" "If that's okay." "It's definitely okay. Dad makes good eggs. Not great eggs, but good eggs." "I'll take that as a compliment," Ethan said dryly. They ate together, Lily doing most of the talking, about school, about her friend Marcus, who was still annoying, about the book she was reading, where a girl discovers she has magic powers but has to keep it secret. Victoria listened with what seemed like genuine interest, asking questions that weren't condescending, treating Lily like an actual person instead of a small inconvenience. "What do you do at my dad's work?" Lily asked eventually. "I run the company." Lily's eyes widened. "You're the boss?" "I'm the boss." "Wow. Is that fun?" Victoria considered this. "Sometimes. Mostly it's stressful. My dad says you have to be smart to run a company." "Your dad's right. He also says you have to be kind." "Are you kind?" The question hung in the air. Ethan opened his mouth to redirect, but Victoria spoke first. "I'm trying to be," she said quietly. "But I don't think I'm very good at it yet." Lily nodded sagely, like this made perfect sense. "That's okay. Dad says trying is what matters. Like when I try to do math homework and I get it wrong. He says the trying part is important." "Your dad sounds very wise." "He's all right," Lily said, grinning at Ethan. After breakfast, Victoria called for a car. While they waited, she stood in the living room looking around one more time at the space that was probably smaller than her closet, but somehow felt fuller than anywhere she'd been in years. "Thank you," she said when the notification came that her car was downstairs. "For last night, for this morning, for not leaving me alone." "Anyone would have done the same. We both know that's not true." She picked up her shoes, started toward the door, then stopped. "Ethan, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "How do you do it?" "Balance everything. The grief, the job, being a parent, staying kind." Ethan thought about all the nights he'd lain awake, staring at the ceiling, all the times he'd broken down in the shower where Lily couldn't hear, all the moments he'd felt like he was failing at everything, just trying to keep his head above water. "Honestly, most days I don't know if I'm doing it right," he said. "I just keep showing up, for Lily, for work. And I try not to be worse than I was yesterday. That's it. That's the whole strategy." Victoria looked at him for a long moment. "You make it sound simple." "It's not, but it's something." She nodded slowly, something shifting in her expression. "Maybe that's enough." After she left, Ethan got Lily ready for school, packed her lunch, walked her to the bus stop. The whole time his mind kept drifting back to Victoria's question. "How do you do it?" He didn't have a better answer. He just kept moving forward because stopping wasn't an option. Because Lily needed breakfast and clean clothes and help with homework. Because the rent was due and the car needed an oil change and life didn't pause for grief or exhaustion or the weight of carrying everything alone. But something about Victoria's question made him realize he'd been doing more than just surviving. Somewhere along the way, without really noticing, he'd built something that mattered. Not perfect, not without cracks, but real. That evening, after Lily was in bed, Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you again for last night. I know I said that already, but I mean it. You didn't have to help me. Most people wouldn't have." VH, he stared at the message for a moment, then typed back. "Glad you're okay. Take care of yourself." The response came quickly. "I'm going to try. Maybe you can teach me how." Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything. Just set the phone down and tried not to think about how Victoria Hale had looked sitting in his kitchen that morning, holding a coffee mug with both hands, asking questions like the answers actually mattered. This was done. Over. Tomorrow he'd go back to work, back to being invisible, back to fixing broken things that weren't people. But as he drifted off to sleep that night, He couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that the careful distance he'd maintained for 3 years between work and home, between survival and actually living, had cracked open just enough to let something unexpected through, and he had no idea what to do about it. Monday morning came with the kind of cold that made everything feel sharper. Ethan dropped Lily at school, watched her run toward her friends without looking back, and drove to work with the heat in his car barely functioning. The weekend had passed in its usual rhythm: groceries, laundry, a trip to the park where Lily had insisted on the swings, even though the metal chains were freezing. Normal, predictable, safe. He told himself the thing with Victoria was over, done. She'd gone back to her world, he'd stayed in his, and that was how it should be. Then he walked into work and found a memo waiting in his employee portal. Company-wide meeting. 10 a.m. Attendance mandatory. Ethan frowned at his phone. Hale Industries didn't do company-wide meetings. Quarterly updates, maybe. Department briefings. But never everyone at once. The last time that happened was when they'd announced layoffs 4 years ago, and people had spent weeks walking around looking like they were waiting for execution. By 9:50, the main auditorium was packed. Ethan found a seat near the back, next to Martinez from Electrical and Chen from HVAC. The low murmur of conversation filled the space, anxious and speculative. "Think it's more layoffs?" Martinez muttered. "In December? Right before Christmas?" Chen shook his head. "That'd be cold even for this place. You see the stock price last week? Down 8%. That's not our problem. It will be if they start cutting." Ethan didn't say anything. He just watched the stage, waiting. At 10 exactly, Victoria walked out. She looked nothing like the woman who'd been crying in his passenger seat 4 days ago. Her suit was perfect, her hair pulled back, her expression composed and professional. But something was different. The way she moved, maybe. Less like she was wearing armor, and more like she was just wearing clothes. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying through the speakers. "I know this is unusual. Company-wide meetings aren't our standard practice, but I needed to speak with all of you, and I needed to do it directly." The murmur died. Everyone leaned forward slightly, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Victoria took a breath. "I've been CEO of this company for 6 years. In that time, we've increased revenue by 40%, expanded into 3 new markets, and built a reputation as one of the most efficient operations in our industry." She paused. "We've also built a reputation as a place where people don't stay very long, where turnover is high, where employees feel undervalued and overworked." Ethan felt Chen shift beside him. This wasn't the speech anyone had expected. "I want to be clear," Victoria continued. "That's on me. I've prioritized profit over people. Efficiency over humanity. And I convinced myself that was necessary. That being cold was the same as being strong." She looked out at the crowd, and for a second Ethan could have sworn her eyes found his. "But it's not," she said quietly, "and I'm done pretending it is." The room was silent now. Absolutely silent. "Effective immediately. We're implementing changes. Real changes. Starting with healthcare. Full coverage, no employee contribution. Parental leave expanded to 6 months paid for any parent, not just birth mothers, anyone." She clicked to the next slide. "Profit sharing. 10% of annual profits distributed among all employees, not just executives. Weighted by tenure, not position." Martinez grabbed Ethan's arm. "Is she serious?" "Mental health resources," Victoria continued. "On-site counseling. No copay. Flexible scheduling for anyone who needs it. And," she paused, "a complete restructuring of our management evaluation system. Starting next quarter, managers will be reviewed by their direct reports. Not the other way around. If you're treating your team like they're disposable, you won't be managing them anymore." The silence broke. Conversations erupted throughout the auditorium, people turning to each other with expressions ranging from shock to disbelief to something that might have been hope. Victoria waited for it to settle. "I know some of you are thinking this sounds too good to be true, that it's a PR move or a trick. It's not. You can read the full policy documentation in your employee portal by end of day. It's binding. It's real." She gripped the podium. "I spent years building a company where people were afraid to talk to me, where showing up to a holiday party felt obligatory instead of enjoyable, where nobody stayed to say goodnight because nobody wanted to be near me." Her voice cracked slightly. "That's not the kind of place I want to run. And it's not the kind of place you deserve to work." Ethan couldn't look away. This was the woman who'd sat at his kitchen table asking how he kept going. The woman who'd read a bedtime story to Lily like it was the most important thing in the world. She was still that person. She'd just been buried under years of trying to be something else. Change starts today, Victoria said, with me. And I'm asking you to hold me accountable. If you see something that doesn't align with these values, speak up, send me an email, stop me in the hallway. I promise I'll listen. She stepped back from the podium. Thank you for your time and for your patience with me while I figure out how to do this right. The applause started slowly, then built. Not the polite, obligatory clapping of a corporate meeting. Something real. Something that sounded like relief. As people filed out, Ethan stayed in his seat. Martinez was already on his phone, probably texting his wife. Chen was reading through the policy docs, his expression stunned. Did that actually just happen? Chen said. I think so. What changed? Ethan thought about Victoria in his living room, holding a coffee mug with both hands, about Lily asking if she was kind, and Victoria saying she was trying to be. No idea, he said. He didn't see Victoria for the rest of the day. Didn't expect to. She had an entire company to run, changes to implement, probably 1,000 meetings with executives who weren't happy about profit sharing and expanded benefits. Her world and his world had touched for one strange night, but they were separate again now. Then, at 4:30, his phone buzzed. Can we talk? VH. Ethan stared at the message. Around him, the maintenance office was winding down, people logging their final calls of the day, grabbing their coats. He stepped into the hallway before responding. Sure. When? Now? I'm in my office. The executive floor was quiet, most of the assistants already gone for the day. Ethan had been up here exactly twice, once for his initial hiring interview, once to fix a thermostat that nobody else could reach. Both times he'd felt like he was trespassing. Victoria's office was at the end of the hall, behind a glass door with her name etched into it. He knocked, and she called for him to come in. She was standing near the windows, looking out at the city. Her suit jacket was draped over her chair, her sleeves rolled up. She looked tired. You came, she said, turning. You asked. I wasn't sure you would. She gestured to the chairs in front of her desk. Sit, please. Ethan sat. The office was exactly what he'd expected. Expensive furniture, awards on the walls, everything perfectly arranged, except for the desk, which was covered in papers and coffee cups and looked like someone had actually been working there. I watched you during the meeting, Victoria said. You were in the back, didn't react much. Didn't know what to say. Were you surprised? Yeah. Good surprised or bad surprised? Ethan met her eyes. Good, but confused. Victoria sat on the edge of her desk, arms crossed. I meant what I said up there, about changing, about doing better. She paused. But I didn't tell them why. Why now? Why any of this? You don't owe anyone an explanation. I owe you one. The words hung between them. Outside, the sun was setting, turning the windows gold. That night, Victoria said quietly, when you brought me to your apartment, I woke up on your couch at 6 in the morning, and for about 30 seconds, I had no idea where I was. Then I saw the photos on your wall. Your daughter's drawings, the blanket that looked hand-knitted, and I realized I was in someone's home, an actual home, not just a place to sleep. She picked up a pen from her desk, turned it over in her hands. I've lived in the same penthouse for 8 years. It costs more than most people make in a decade. It has a view that gets featured in magazines, and it's empty, completely empty. No photos, no drawings, nothing that says anyone actually lives there. She looked at him. You know what I thought about, sitting on your couch that morning? What? That I couldn't remember the last time someone touched me. Not professionally. Not a handshake or a shoulder squeeze in a meeting. Actually touched me. Like I was a person. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Then you made breakfast, Victoria continued, and your daughter came out and asked if I was feeling better. Like she actually cared. Like it mattered to her. Her voice got quieter. And I realized I've spent years building a life where nobody asks if I'm okay, because I made sure they wouldn't. Because being untouchable felt safer than being vulnerable. You're not untouchable. I was. I am. I have been. She set the pen down. But I don't want to be anymore. Ethan thought about the woman crying in his car, mascara streaked and honest in a way that probably terrified her. So you changed the entire company. I changed the things I could control. Because someone showed me that being kind doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. She looked directly at him. You showed me that. I just made breakfast. You didn't just make breakfast. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped them. No agenda, no expectation of anything in return. You just did it because it was the right thing to do. Victoria's expression shifted. Do you know how rare that is? It shouldn't be. But it is, at least in my world. They were quiet for a moment. Ethan could hear the muffled sounds of the building settling, the distant ping of the elevator, the hum of the heating system cycling on. Your daughter asked me if I was kind, Victoria said, and I told her I was trying to be. I've been thinking about that, about trying, about whether that's enough. It's a start. Is it? Because I look at you and I see someone who's been trying for 3 years, trying to be a good father, trying to keep going, trying to be kind even when everything fell apart. She shook her head. And I look at myself and I see someone who stopped trying a long time ago, who decided it was easier not to care. You cared enough to change things. Because I didn't want to be that person anymore. The one nobody wants to be around. The one who throws parties where people leave early because they can't stand another minute. Victoria stood pacing to the window again. I'm 41 years old, Ethan, and I don't have anything real. No family, no relationships that aren't transactional, nothing. You have time to change that. Do I? Because some days I feel like I'm watching my life from outside my body, like I built this perfect career and forgot to build anything else. She turned back to him. How do you do it? How do you make a life that matters when everything's broken? Ethan stood, moved closer to where she was standing. You don't wait for it to stop being broken. You just work with what you have. Some days that's enough. Some days it's not. But you keep going anyway. That sounds exhausting. It is. Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You're very honest. You asked. I did. She was quiet for a moment, then said, Can I ask you something else? And you can say no. I know this is weird, but can I? She stopped, frustrated with herself. I don't know how to ask this. Just ask. Now, can I spend more time with you and Lily? Not at work. Just, I don't know, normal things. I want to understand how this works, how you built something real, how you stay connected to what matters. She looked almost embarrassed. I sound ridiculous. You don't. I'm your boss asking to hang out with you and your 7-year-old. That's the definition of ridiculous. Ethan considered it. The smart thing would be to say no, to keep boundaries, to not blur the lines between work and whatever this was becoming. But he thought about Lily asking Victoria to read to her, about Victoria's face when she'd realized someone actually wanted her there. Lily has a school thing Friday night, he said. Holiday concert. Parents are supposed to come. It's mostly just kids singing off key and forgetting the words. If you want to see what normal looks like, that's about as normal as it gets. Victoria looked stunned. You're inviting me to your daughter's school concert. Only if you want to come. No pressure. I want to. She said it quickly, like she was afraid she'd lose the nerve if she waited. What time? 7. At the elementary school on 5th. But seriously, it's not exciting. It's an hour of kids murdering jingle bells. Sounds perfect. After Ethan left, Victoria stood alone in her office, looking out at the city lights beginning to flicker on across the skyline. She'd spent years in this office, working late, avoiding the emptiness of going home. It had always felt like control, like purpose. Now it just felt lonely. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her contacts, hundreds of names, clients, executives, lawyers, board members, people she could call if she needed something professional. Nobody she could call just to talk. Except now there was one name that didn't fit the pattern. Ethan Cole. She'd added it after that morning, after he'd responded to her thank you text with simple kindness instead of the awkward distance she'd expected. She typed out a message, deleted it, typed it again. Thank you for the invitation and for not making this weird. His response came a few minutes later. It's already weird, might as well embrace it. Victoria laughed alone in her office, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, it felt real. The rest of the week passed in a blur. The policy changes Victoria had announced sent ripples through the entire company, some good, some complicated. A few executives resigned, unwilling to work under the new structure. Others seemed cautiously optimistic, like they couldn't quite believe it was real but wanted to. Ethan kept his head down, did his work, tried not to think about Friday, but Lily had other ideas. "Is Ms. Hale really coming to my concert?" she asked Wednesday night over dinner. "If she can. She's busy." "She's the boss. She can do whatever she wants." "Doesn't work that way." Lily speared a piece of broccoli, studied it like it contained answers. "Do you like her?" "I barely know her, sweetheart." "But do you like her?" Ethan paused. "She's going through a hard time. I think she could use friends." "So you're being nice because she's sad." "I'm being nice because it's the right thing to do." Lily considered this. "Marcus says people are only nice when they want something." "Marcus is 7 and kind of a cynic." "What's a cynic?" "Someone who doesn't trust that people can be good just to be good." "Oh." Lily chewed thoughtfully. "I think Ms. Hale is lonely. She looked lonely when she was at our house." Kids saw things adults missed, Ethan thought. All the carefully constructed walls, the professional distance, none of it mattered to Lily. She just saw a person who needed someone to care. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think she is." Friday came faster than expected. Ethan got off work early, picked up Lily from after-school care, and headed to the elementary school gymnasium that smelled like old sneakers and anxiety. Parents were already filing in, claiming seats, armed with cameras and phones to document their children's moment of glory. Ethan found seats near the middle, close enough to see but not so close that Lily would be distracted. He checked his phone. 6:55. Victoria had texted earlier saying she'd be there, but he hadn't heard anything since. Then, at 6:58, she appeared at the entrance. She wasn't in a suit. That was the first thing Ethan noticed. She wore jeans and a sweater, her hair down, minimal makeup. She looked normal. Nervous, but normal. She spotted him and made her way over, navigating the crowd like she was infiltrating enemy territory. "I wasn't sure I had the right place," she said, sitting down beside him. "There are apparently 3 elementary schools on 5th. You made it. That's what matters." "Is this too weird? Me being here?" "Probably, but Lily will be excited." As if on cue, the lights dimmed slightly and the children filed onto the stage in their festive clothes, red dresses, green sweaters, one kid wearing a full Santa costume for no apparent reason. Lily spotted them immediately, her face lighting up when she saw Victoria sitting next to her dad. She waved enthusiastically, nearly hitting the kid next to her. "She's adorable," Victoria whispered. "She's trouble." The concert was exactly as advertised, off-key singing, forgotten lyrics, one child who cried halfway through Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and had to be escorted off stage. It was chaotic and imperfect, and exactly the kind of thing that made being a parent both excruciating and wonderful. Victoria watched it all with the focus of someone taking notes for an exam. When Lily's class performed their song, a wobbly version of Frosty the Snowman, she leaned forward, completely absorbed. "She's good," Victoria whispered. "She's shouting the words in off-tempo." "She's enthusiastic. That counts." After it was over, after the applause and the bow and the parents rushing forward with cameras, Lily ran straight to them. "You came," she said to Victoria, breathless and grinning. "I came. You were wonderful." "I forgot the words to the second verse." "Nobody noticed." "My teacher noticed. She gave me the look." Lily demonstrated a very stern expression that made Victoria laugh. "Well, I thought you were perfect." They walked out together, Lily between them, chattering about her classmates and who forgot their lines and how Marcus's mom brought cookies but they were store-bought so they didn't count. Normal parent conversation, the kind that happened in parking lots across the country every day. Except it wasn't normal, because Victoria Hale, CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, was standing under a streetlight listening to a 7-year-old explain the social hierarchy of second grade like it was the most fascinating thing she'd ever heard. "Are you hungry?" Ethan found himself asking. "We usually get pizza after these things." Victoria looked surprised. "I don't want to intrude on your tradition. It's pizza, not a sacred ritual." "Pizza!" Lily bounced on her toes. "Ms. Hale, do you like pizza? I don't remember the last time I had pizza. Lily's expression suggested this was the saddest thing she'd ever heard. You have to come then. Dad always gets half pepperoni, half mushroom, but the mushroom is gross so you can have some of the pepperoni. That's very generous of you. They ended up at Marco's, a place with checkered tablecloths and walls covered in photos of customers from over the years. It was loud and crowded and smelled like garlic bread. Victoria looked completely out of place and completely fascinated. You come here a lot? She asked as they slid into a booth. Every Friday we can, Ethan said. Lily's mom loved this place, said it reminded her of growing up in Brooklyn. My mom never took me for pizza, Victoria said quietly. We always ate at home, very controlled portions, very healthy. That sounds boring, Lily said. It was. The pizza came, hot and greasy and perfect. Lily told Victoria about every kid in her class, their names and their quirks, and who was friends with who. Victoria asked questions like she was genuinely interested, not just being polite. At one point, tomato sauce on her chin, Lily said, "Do you have any friends, Ms. Hale?" "Lily," Ethan started. "It's okay." Victoria wiped her mouth with a napkin, considering the question. "Not really, not the way you mean." "Why not?" "I guess I forgot how. I've been working so much for so long that I lost track of everything else." "That's sad." "It is sad." "You can be friends with us if you want." Victoria's expression did something complicated. For a second, Ethan thought she might cry. Instead, she smiled, genuine and unguarded in a way he hadn't seen before. "I would really like that," she said. They stayed until the restaurant started clearing out, until Lily was yawning between bites, until it was clear the night was winding down. Outside, the cold hit them immediately, sharp and clean. "Thank you," Victoria said as they walked to their cars. "For tonight. For including me. Lily loved having you there." "What about you?" Ethan looked at her. This woman who was technically his boss, who'd shown up at his daughter's school concert in jeans and a sweater, who'd listened to a 7-year-old talk about pizza toppings like it mattered. "Yeah," he said. "I'm glad you came." Victoria smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Good, because I'd like to do it again, if that's okay. Not just concerts, just whatever. Normal things." "Normal things," Ethan repeated, "with your employee and his daughter." "When you say it like that, it sounds weird." "It is weird." "I know, but I don't care anymore. I'm tired of pretending everything has to make sense." Lily tugged on Ethan's sleeve. "Dad, I'm cold." "All right, sweetheart, say goodnight." "Good night, Ms. Hale." "Good night, Lily." Victoria hesitated, then added, "You can call me Victoria if you want." Lily's eyes went wide. "Really? Really?" On the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, her head against the window. Ethan glanced at her in the rearview mirror, then thought about Victoria standing in the parking lot, looking less lonely than she had a week ago. He wasn't sure what was happening. Wasn't sure if this was a good idea or if he was walking into something complicated that would blow up in ways he couldn't predict. But for the first time in 3 years, something felt different. Not fixed, not easy, just different. And maybe that was enough. The weeks that followed felt like stepping into someone else's life. Victoria started showing up in ways Ethan hadn't expected. Not dramatic, not invasive, just present. She'd text on Thursday nights asking if they were going to Marco's after Lily's concert practice. She'd stop by the maintenance office with coffee, claiming she was already on that floor anyway, which they both knew wasn't true. She remembered Lily's teacher's name and asked how the math homework was going. It should have been strange. It was strange. But somehow it also wasn't. 2 weeks before Christmas, Victoria showed up at Ethan's apartment on a Saturday morning with no warning. He opened the door in sweatpants and an old college t-shirt, Lily still in her pajamas, watching cartoons behind him. "I'm sorry," Victoria said immediately. "I should have called. I was driving and I thought..." She held up a bakery box. "I brought donuts. Is that weird?" "That's weird." "It's 7:30 in the morning," Ethan said. "I know. I'm sorry. I'll go." "Victoria." She stopped, halfway turned toward the stairs. "Come in." Lily appeared behind Ethan, eyes wide at the sight of the bakery box. "Are those donuts?" "They are," Victoria said. "If your dad says it's okay." "Dad, it's okay, right?" Ethan sighed, stepping aside. Yeah, it's okay. They ended up on the floor in the living room, the coffee table pushed aside, donut box open between them. Lily had chocolate frosting on her nose. Victoria had powdered sugar on her jeans. The cartoons played in the background, ignored. So, Ethan said, biting into a glazed donut, you just decided to show up at 7:30 with pastries. I couldn't sleep. I've been up since 4. I went for a run, came back, showered, and then I didn't want to be alone. Victoria looked embarrassed. I'm sorry, this is pathetic. It's not pathetic. I'm your boss showing up at your apartment unannounced on a Saturday morning because I'm lonely. That's textbook pathetic. Lily looked up from her donut, expression serious. My dad says being lonely isn't something to be ashamed of. It just means you need people. Victoria stared at her. Your dad's very smart. I know. They spent the morning doing nothing important. Lily showed Victoria her room, which was an explosion of stuffed animals and art projects and books scattered everywhere. Victoria asked about each thing like it mattered, the drawing taped to the wall, the rock collection on the dresser, the fort made out of blankets in the corner. I built that with my dad, Lily said, pointing to the fort. It's our special place. We go in there when things are hard and we just talk. About what? Lily shrugged. Stuff. Sometimes about Mom. Sometimes about school. Sometimes we don't talk at all. We just sit there. Victoria crouched down to peer inside the fort. That sounds nice. Do you want to go in? Can I? Yeah, but you have to take your shoes off. Those are the rules. So Victoria Hale, CEO of Hale Industries, took off her expensive sneakers and crawled into a blanket fort with a 7-year-old while Ethan watched from the doorway, trying to figure out what his life had become. Later, after Lily had gotten dressed and convinced them to walk to the park, Ethan and Victoria sat on a bench while Lily played on the swings. The air was cold enough to see their breath, the sky that washed out December gray that made everything feel muted. I'm sorry about this morning, Victoria said. Showing up like that, I'm not good at boundaries. You brought donuts. I'm not complaining. Still, I should have asked first. Ethan watched Lily swing higher, her laughter carrying across the playground. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why us? Why Lily and me? You could have, I don't know, found a therapist, joined a book club, made friends with people who aren't your employees. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Because you saw me at my worst and you didn't run. You didn't judge. You just helped. And then the next morning you made breakfast like it was the most normal thing in the world. She pulled her coat tighter. Everyone else in my life wants something from me. A promotion, a favor, access. You just wanted me to be okay. That's not special. That's basic human decency. Maybe, but I haven't experienced much of it. She turned to look at him. And Lily, she looks at me like I'm just a person. Not her dad's boss, not someone important, just someone who might be her friend. Do you know how rare that is? She likes you. I like her. I like both of you. Victoria's voice got quieter. I spent years convincing myself I didn't need anyone, that being alone was the same as being independent. But it's not. It's just lonely. Before Ethan could respond, Lily came running over, cheeks pink from the cold. Victoria, can you push me on the swings? Dad pushes too high and it's scary. Victoria stood immediately. I can try. No promises, I'll be better. Ethan watched them walk back to the swings, Victoria listening intently as Lily explained the proper pushing technique. This woman who ran a company, who made decisions worth millions, was nodding along to a 7-year-old's instructions like they were the most important thing she'd ever heard. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister, Rachel. How are you? Haven't heard from you in a while. Ethan stared at the message, then typed back. Good. Busy with work and Lily. How are the kids? The response came quickly. Chaotic as always. You should come visit for Christmas. Mom keeps asking about you. Maybe. I'll let you know. He pocketed the phone without responding further. Rachel meant well, but visits always felt like auditions. Everyone watching to see if he was coping okay, if Lily was adjusting, if he'd started dating again. The last question always came up, usually from his mother, framed as concern, but feeling like pressure. You need to move on, Ethan. For Lily's sake. as if moving on was something you could schedule, as if grief operated on a timeline that made sense to anyone but the person living through it. "Dad!" Lily's voice snapped him back. "Come push with us." He joined them at the swings, and for a while they just played, taking turns, laughing when Lily went too high and screamed, Victoria nearly falling over trying to demonstrate the perfect push. It was stupid and simple and exactly what Saturday mornings should feel like. On the walk back, Lily between them holding both their hands, Victoria said, "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Do you ever think about dating again?" Ethan nearly tripped. "That's pretty personal." "I know, you don't have to answer." They walked in silence for a few steps. Lily had released their hands and run ahead, distracted by a dog being walked on the other side of the street. "Sometimes," Ethan said finally, "but it feels complicated. Lily's getting older. She asks questions about her mom, and the idea of bringing someone new into that—" He stopped. "I don't know. It feels like I'd be replacing Sarah, even though I know that's not how it works." "Do you think Sarah would want you to be alone?" "No, she'd probably be pissed I'm not dating. She was always the brave one, the one who pushed me to take risks." He smiled slightly. "She used to say I thought too much, that I'd analyze something until all the joy was gone." Was she right? Usually. Victoria was quiet, and when Ethan glanced over, she looked lost in thought. "I think about that sometimes. If I'd been different, if I'd taken risks, if I'd let people in instead of pushing them away, where I'd be now." "You're letting people in now." "Am I? Or am I just forcing myself into your life because I'm desperate?" "Both things can be true." She laughed, sharp and surprised. "You're honest. I appreciate that." "You asked." They reached the apartment building, Lily already running ahead toward the entrance. Victoria stopped at her car, parked in a visitor spot. "Thank you," she said, "for letting me crash your morning. I promise I won't make a habit of it." "You can crash whenever you want. Just maybe text first so I'm wearing real pants." Victoria smiled, genuine and warm. "Deal." She got in her car and Ethan watched her drive away, feeling like something had shifted again, like the boundaries between work and life, between acquaintance and friend, were getting blurrier in ways he couldn't quite define. That night, after Lily was asleep, he pulled out his phone and opened the Photos app, scrolled back through years of pictures. Sarah's smile, their wedding, Lily as a baby, the last photo of the three of them together, taken 2 weeks before the accident. He used to look at these every night, torturing himself with what he'd lost. Now he looked at them differently, not as reminders of what was gone, but as proof that he'd had something real, that he was capable of building a life with someone. The question was whether he was capable of doing it again. Monday morning brought a different kind of complication. Ethan was in the electrical room on the 6th floor tracking down a circuit issue when Martinez found him. "Hey man, you need to see this." "See what?" Martinez held up his phone. On the screen was a photo from the company message board. Ethan and Victoria sitting together at Lily's school concert, visible through the gymnasium window. "Someone posted this Friday night," Martinez said. People are talking." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Talking about what?" "About you and the CEO. About why she's at your kid's school event. About whether something's going on." "Nothing's going on." "I believe you, but other people—" Martinez shrugged. "You know how it is. Gossip spreads fast." Ethan took the phone, scrolled through the comments. Most were curious, some were supportive. A few were mean-spirited, implying things that made his jaw tighten. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "Welcome to working for a company where everyone's bored and underpaid. Drama's free entertainment." Martinez took his phone back. "Just giving you a heads up. Thought you should know before it gets worse." It got worse. By Tuesday, the rumors had spread from curious speculation to outright accusations. Ethan heard it in the break room, people saying he was sleeping with Victoria to get promoted, that she was having a midlife crisis and latching on to the first guy who showed her attention, that the whole thing was inappropriate and probably against company policy. Ethan ignored it, kept his head down, did his work, tried not to engage. Then Victoria called him into her office Wednesday afternoon. She looked tired, sitting behind her desk with her laptop open and about 6 coffee cups scattered around. When he walked in, she closed the laptop and gestured for him to sit. "You've heard the rumors," she said. Not a question. "Some of them. All of them, probably. People aren't exactly subtle. She rubbed her temples. HR came to see me this morning, said there's been complaints, that our friendship looks inappropriate, that I'm showing favoritism. Are you? No. You're still in maintenance. You haven't gotten a promotion or a raise or any special treatment. I've been careful about that. So what's the problem? Victoria leaned back in her chair. The problem is perception. It doesn't matter what's actually happening. It matters what people think is happening. So what do? HR suggested I create distance. Stop spending time with you outside of work. Make it clear we're professional only. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. Is that what you want? No. The word came out sharp. But I don't know what else to do. I can't have people thinking I'm compromising the company because She stopped, frustrated. Because I finally found someone who treats me like a human being instead of a boss. This isn't fair to you. Life isn't fair, Ethan. I learned that a long time ago. She stood, paced to the window. But I won't let this hurt you. If people think you're getting special treatment, it'll damage your reputation. Make your job harder. And Lily, her voice caught, I won't let gossip affect her. If other parents start talking, if she hears things at school, she won't. You don't know that. Ethan stood, moved closer to where she was standing. Victoria, look at me. She turned, and he saw the fear in her eyes. Not of losing her job or her reputation, of losing this, the connection they'd built, the friendship that meant something. I don't care what people say about me, Ethan said quietly. I've dealt with gossip before. After Sarah died, everyone had opinions about how I should grieve, what I should do, whether I was coping right. I survived that. I can survive this. But you shouldn't have to. Maybe not. But that's the world we live in. People talk, they speculate. They make up stories because their own lives are boring. He held her gaze. What matters is what we know is true, that we're friends, that you've been there for Lily and me, that you're a good person who deserves to have people in your life who care about you. What if this gets worse? What if they force me to choose between my job and... She didn't finish the sentence. Then you choose what's right for you. But don't push me away because you're scared. We've both been scared long enough. Victoria looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. Then she did something that surprised them both. She stepped forward and hugged him. It was brief, almost awkward, but real. Thank you, she whispered, for not running. I'm not going anywhere. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. I need to figure this out. How to handle the gossip, how to protect you, how to make this work without... She stopped. I just need time. Take all the time you need. Ethan left her office feeling like he'd just navigated a minefield. The hallway was empty, but he could feel eyes on him anyway. Judgment from people who didn't know anything about the situation, but had decided their version was the truth. That evening, he picked up Lily from after-school care and drove home in silence, his mind spinning. Lily chattered about her day, about Marcus being annoying again, about the art project they were working on. He responded on autopilot, only half listening. Dad, are you okay? Lily asked as they pulled into the parking lot. Yeah, sweetheart, just tired. Is it about Victoria? Ethan looked at her in the rearview mirror. What makes you ask that? You've been quiet since she came over on Saturday, and you have your thinking face. My thinking face? Yeah. The one where you look worried, but you're trying not to show it. Kids really did see everything, Ethan thought. I'm fine. Just some stuff at work. Do people not like that you're friends with Victoria? He parked the car, turned to face her. Some people don't understand. They think it's weird. Because she's your boss? Yeah. Lily thought about this. That is kind of weird, but also she's nice and she brought us donuts and she pushes me on the swings good, so who cares if it's weird? You're right. I'm always right. Ethan smiled despite himself. Don't let that go to your head. That night, after Lily was in bed, Ethan sat in the dark living room thinking about Victoria's question from Saturday. About dating, about moving forward, about what it meant to let someone new into his life. He pulled out his phone, looked at the last text Victoria had sent. I'm sorry about today. I'll figure this out. I promise. He typed back, "Stop apologizing. We'll figure it out together." Her response came a few minutes later. "Together." I like the sound of that. Ethan stared at those words for a long time, trying to identify the feeling in his chest. It wasn't quite hope, wasn't quite fear. Something in between. Something that felt like standing at the edge of something new and not knowing if it was safe to jump. The following Saturday, Victoria texted asking if she could come over. Not for donuts, not for anything specific, just to be there. Ethan said yes. She showed up at 9, this time in jeans and a hoodie that looked old and comfortable. She didn't apologize for coming, just walked in like she belonged there. They made breakfast together, Ethan cooking eggs, while Victoria attempted pancakes with Lily's enthusiastic but questionable help. The kitchen was chaos, flour everywhere, Lily laughing when Victoria flipped a pancake and it landed on the floor. "I'm terrible at this," Victoria said, staring at the fallen pancake. "You're trying. That counts." "Is that your answer to everything? Trying counts?" "Pretty much." They ate at the small kitchen table, elbows bumping, Lily talking nonstop about her week. Victoria listened like she always did, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. Normal. Easy. After breakfast, Lily wanted to show Victoria how to build a proper blanket fort. Not the small one in her room, but an elaborate structure that took over the entire living room. They spent 2 hours engineering it, using chairs and couch cushions and every blanket Ethan owned. Victoria took her role as structural consultant seriously, debating load-bearing walls and optimal entrance placement. When they finally finished, all 3 of them crawled inside. It was cramped and dark except for the flashlight Lily had insisted they bring. They sat cross-legged, shoulders touching, breathing the same warm air. "This is nice," Victoria said quietly. "Yeah," Lily agreed. "Forts make everything better." "Why is that?" Lily thought about it. "Because when you're in a fort, the outside world can't get you. You're safe." Victoria looked at Ethan in the dim light. He could see tears in her eyes, but she was smiling. "I haven't felt safe in a long time," Victoria whispered. "You're safe here," Lily said matter-of-factly. "That's what forts are for." They stayed there for a while, not talking, just existing in the small protected space. Ethan thought about all the times he and Lily had retreated to forts when things got hard. After bad days at school, after nights when Lily cried for her mom, after moments when the world felt too big and too cruel. Now Victoria was here, part of this small ritual of survival. And somehow that felt right. Eventually they emerged, dismantled the fort despite Lily's protests that they should live there forever, and spent the afternoon doing nothing important. Victoria helped Lily with homework. Ethan made lunch. They watched a movie Lily had seen 6 times already, but still insisted was the best movie ever made. As the sun started to set, Victoria stood to leave. At the door, she paused. "This is the best day I've had in years," she said. "Just sitting in a fort, eating pancakes, watching a kid's movie." She looked at Ethan. "How is that possible?" "Because it's real," Ethan said. "No pressure, no performance, just people who care about each other." Victoria nodded slowly, like she was filing this information away for later. "I want more days like this." "Then have them." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" She didn't answer, just hugged Lily goodbye, thanked Ethan again, and left. After she was gone, Lily looked up at him. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "I think Victoria's sad. Like, deep down sad. The kind that doesn't go away easy." Ethan crouched down to her level. "What makes you say that?" "Because she looks at us like we're magic, like she can't believe we're real." Lily's expression was serious beyond her years, and people only look at things like that when they think they'll disappear. Ethan pulled her into a hug, amazed and slightly terrified by how perceptive his daughter was. "You're right, sweetheart. She is sad. Are we going to help her feel better?" "We're going to try." "Good. Because everyone deserves to be happy. Even bosses." That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat on the couch in the dark, thinking about Victoria standing in his kitchen earlier, flour on her shirt, laughing at her failed pancakes. About her crawling into a blanket fort like it was the safest place in the world. About her saying she hadn't felt safe in years. He thought about the gossip at work, the judgment, the complications. He thought about Sarah and what she would say if she could see him now. She'd probably tell him to stop overthinking, to take the risk, to let someone in before it was too late. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. I just got home. My apartment feels emptier than usual. Thank you for today, for reminding me what I've been missing, Ethan typed back. You don't have to miss it. It's here whenever you want it. The response came quickly. That might be the kindest thing anyone's ever said to me. Ethan stared at that message for a long time. Then he typed something he'd been thinking all day but hadn't found the words for until now. You deserve kindness, Victoria. I hope you know that. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, a response. I'm starting to believe it. Because of you and Lily. You make me want to believe it. Ethan set the phone down, feeling something shift inside him. Not love, not yet, but something close, something that felt like the beginning of understanding that maybe, just maybe, he was ready to let someone else into the life he'd built, into the fort he and Lily had constructed to keep the world at bay. The question was whether Victoria was ready to step inside, and whether they could both survive what happened if she did. The week before Christmas arrived with a cold snap that made the city feel brittle. Ethan woke up Monday morning to find frost patterns on the windows and Lily complaining that her room was freezing. He made hot chocolate before school, extra marshmallows, and watched her blow on it before each sip like she was performing a ritual. Is Victoria coming over for Christmas? Lily asked between sips. I don't know, sweetheart. She might have her own plans. She doesn't have family. You said so. That doesn't mean she doesn't have plans. Lily gave him a look that suggested she saw right through him. You should invite her. It's complicated. Why? Because inviting Victoria for Christmas felt like crossing a line they'd been carefully dancing around for weeks. Because it meant something. Because once you invited someone to spend holidays with you, you were saying they belonged in your life in a way that went beyond casual friendship. Just is, Ethan said finally. That's not a real answer. It's the answer you're getting. At work, the holiday party was scheduled for Friday, the same event that had started this whole thing weeks ago. Ethan had already decided not to go. Too much potential for awkwardness, too many people who'd seen the photos and drawn their own conclusions. He'd make up an excuse about Lily, stay home, avoid the whole situation. Then Victoria caught him in the hallway Tuesday afternoon. You're coming Friday, right? She said without preamble. I was thinking about skipping because of the gossip. Because of a lot of things. Victoria glanced around, making sure they were alone. Ethan, I need you there. I know that's selfish. I know it might be uncomfortable, but I can't do another one of these parties alone. Not after last time. Not after... She stopped, frustration crossing her face. Please. He'd never heard her say please like that. Like she was asking for something she desperately needed but was afraid to admit. Okay, he said. I'll be there. Thank you. She walked away before he could respond, leaving him standing in the hallway, wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. Friday came too fast. Ethan dropped Lily at Mrs. Chen's for the evening, ignoring the knowing look the older woman gave him when he said he had a work thing. He put on the one decent shirt he owned that didn't have stains or worn elbows, spent too long staring at himself in the mirror, trying to figure out if he looked presentable, and drove to the office building with his stomach in knots. The party was in the same conference room as before. Same catering, same decorations, same forced cheerfulness. Except this time, when Ethan walked in, people noticed. Conversations paused. Eyes tracked him across the room. He felt like he was wearing a sign that said, "Ask me about my inappropriate relationship with the CEO." He grabbed a beer from the bar, found a spot near the windows where he could observe without being in the center of attention, and tried to look like he belonged there. Martinez appeared at his elbow after 10 minutes. You actually came. Apparently. You know people are going to talk. They're already talking. Might as well give them something to look at. Martinez laughed. Fair enough. For what it's worth, I think the whole thing's ridiculous. So Victoria wants to hang out with someone who isn't a corporate robot. Big deal. Thanks. But you should know, some of the executives aren't happy. They think she's lost focus. That the policy changes were emotional decisions, not business ones. There's talk about bringing concerns to the board. Ethan's grip tightened on his beer. What kind of concerns? That she's compromised, that her judgment is clouded, that she needs to be removed for the good of the company. Martinez shrugged. It's probably nothing, corporate politics, but I thought you should know. After Martinez left, Ethan stood there trying to process what he'd just heard. Victoria could lose her job. Because of him. Because she dared to be human instead of a machine. Because she'd made the mistake of letting someone in. He was still processing when Victoria made her entrance. Same as before. Polished, professional, projecting confidence. But Ethan saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She was performing again, playing the role everyone expected. Their eyes met across the room. She gave him a small nod, then moved into the crowd, shaking hands, making small talk, doing her job. Ethan watched her work the room for 20 minutes before he realized something was wrong. Her movements were too controlled, her laugh too sharp. She was holding herself together by force of will, and he was probably the only person in the room who could tell. Then David Chen, one of the VPs, cornered her near the bar. Ethan couldn't hear the conversation, but he could read body language. Chen was too close, his posture aggressive, his gestures emphatic. Victoria's face was carefully neutral, but her hands were clenched at her sides. Ethan started moving before he made a conscious decision to do so. He reached them just as Chen said, "Lost sight of what made this company successful. Coddling employees doesn't increase productivity, it makes them soft." "I disagree," Victoria said evenly. "Treating people with respect makes them loyal. Loyal employees work harder. Loyal employees demand more. More benefits, more flexibility, more accommodation. Where does it end? It ends when we've built a company people actually want to work for, instead of one they're desperate to escape." Chen's expression hardened. "Is that why you've been spending so much time with maintenance staff? Getting their perspective on company culture?" The implication hung in the air like smoke. Ethan felt his jaw tighten. "I spend time with whoever I choose," Victoria said, her voice dropping to ice. "And my personal life is none of your concern." "It is when it affects your judgment, when it makes you weak." That's when Ethan stepped in. "Excuse me." Both of them turned. Chen's expression shifted from aggressive to condescending. "Can we help you?" "Yeah, you can stop talking to her like that." Chen blinked, clearly surprised that someone from maintenance would dare interrupt. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "Ethan Cole. I fix things, including broken conversations." Victoria's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't tell him to leave. Chen's face reddened. "This is a private conversation." "Didn't sound private. Sounded like you were being an asshole." Ethan kept his voice level, conversational. "And I figured someone should point that out." "How dare you sit, David!" Victoria's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "I think we're done here." "We are definitely not done. The board will be hearing about this, about all of this." "I'm sure they will, and I'll be happy to explain to them exactly why I've made the changes I've made, and why executives who treat their CEO with disrespect might not be the best fit for our new direction." She smiled, but it had teeth. "Enjoy the party." Chen looked between them, clearly calculating whether to push further. Then he turned and walked away, shoulders rigid with anger. Victoria waited until he was out of earshot before turning to Ethan. "That was incredibly stupid. Probably. You just made an enemy of one of the most powerful executives in this company." "Good. He seems like a jerk." Despite everything, Victoria almost smiled. "He is a jerk, but he also has influence, and now he's going to use it against you." "Let him try." Victoria looked at him for a long moment, something complicated in her expression. "Why did you do that?" "Because he was treating you like garbage, and you didn't deserve it." "I can fight my own battles, Ethan." "I know, but you shouldn't have to, not alone." They stood there, the party continuing around them, people pretending not to watch while absolutely watching. Ethan could feel the judgment, the speculation, the gossip being born in real time, and he didn't care. "Come on," he said. "Let's get out of here." "I can't leave. I'm the host." "You've been here an hour. You've made your appearance. Let's go." "Where?" "Anywhere but here." Victoria glanced around the room, at all the people who were waiting for her to fail, who wanted her to be weak. Then she looked back at Ethan. "Okay," she said. "Let's go." They left through the side exit, avoiding the elevators where people might see them together. In the parking garage, Victoria leaned against her car and let out a long breath. "I really hate these things," she said. I couldn't tell. She laughed, but it sounded exhausted. Did you hear what Martinez told you about the executives? Yeah, he's right. There's a faction that wants me out. They think I've gone soft, that the policy changes were emotional responses instead of strategic decisions, that I'm compromised. She looked at him. They're not entirely wrong. About which part? All of it. The changes were emotional. I did make them because I was compromised, by seeing how empty my life had become, by wanting something different. She pushed off the car. And now it's going to cost me everything I built. You don't know that. I know corporate politics. I know how this works. They'll go to the board, present their case, and I'll be out by February, replaced by someone who cares more about profit margins than people. Ethan moved closer. So fight back. How? Show them the changes are working. Show them profit doesn't have to come at the cost of human decency. Show them you're not weak. You're evolving, growing, becoming the kind of leader they should have had all along. Victoria looked at him like he'd just suggested she fly to the moon. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's hard as hell. But you've already done the hard part. You changed. You admitted you were wrong. Now you just have to prove that being human doesn't make you less effective. It makes you more effective. And if I can't prove that, then at least you tried. At least you didn't spend the rest of your life being someone you hate just because it was easier. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You want to get dinner?" "Lily's at Mrs. Chen's until 8. I have time." They ended up at a diner 3 blocks from Ethan's apartment. Not fancy, not expensive, just a place with vinyl booths and fluorescent lights, and a menu that hadn't changed in 20 years. They ordered burgers and fries and sat across from each other while the world outside got darker. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said after their food arrived. "Sure." "Why do you care? About me, about any of this? You could have stayed out of it. Let me deal with my own problems. But you keep showing up. Why?" Ethan thought about it while he salted his fries. Because when Sarah died, everyone showed up for about 2 weeks. Brought casseroles, offered help, said they'd be there for whatever I needed. Then life went on. They went back to their normal routines, and I was left alone trying to figure out how to be a single parent to a 4-year-old who didn't understand why her mom wasn't coming back. He paused, making sure he had the words right. I learned pretty fast that most people don't actually want to help. They want to feel like they've helped. They want the credit without the work. And I swore if I ever saw someone who genuinely needed help, I wouldn't be like that. I'd show up. I'd stay. I'd actually be there instead of just saying I would be. Victoria's eyes were bright. "I'm not your charity case." "I know. That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" Ethan met her gaze. "Friendship. Maybe something more. I don't know yet. But whatever it is, it's real. And I don't walk away from real just because it's complicated." Victoria looked down at her plate, blinking rapidly. "I don't know how to do this. The friendship thing, the letting people in thing. I've spent my whole adult life keeping people at arm's length." "Then learn. Figure it out as you go. That's what everyone else does." "What if I mess it up?" "You will. Everyone does. But you'll fix it and try again. That's how relationships work." She smiled slightly. "Is that how it worked with Sarah?" "Yeah, we fought. We said stupid things. We hurt each other sometimes. But we always came back. Always fixed it. Always tried harder the next time." He took a bite of his burger, chewed, swallowed. "I'm not saying it was perfect. It wasn't. But it was real. And real is messy and complicated and sometimes painful. But it's also worth it." Victoria picked at her fries, not eating them. "I think I'm falling apart." "I know. That doesn't bother you?" "Everyone falls apart sometimes. It's what you do after that matters." They ate in silence for a while. The diner was mostly empty, just a few other people scattered in booths, lost in their own conversations. Outside it had started snowing, light flakes that caught in the streetlights. "I'm scared," Victoria said quietly, "about the board, about losing my job, about losing—" She stopped. "Losing what?" "This. You and Lily, the only real thing I've had in years." She finally met his eyes. "What if they make me choose the company or—" "Don't think about that yet. Cross that bridge when you get to it. I'm supposed to be strong, in control. I'm supposed to have all the answers." "Nobody has all the answers. We're all just making it up as we go." Victoria laughed, but it sounded like crying. That's terrifying. Yeah, welcome to being human. They left the diner around 7:30, Ethan paying despite Victoria's protests. Outside, the snow was coming down harder, accumulating on car windshields and sidewalks. Victoria stood under the awning, watching it fall. I love snow, she said. When I was a kid, before my parents died, we used to build snowmen. My dad would make hot chocolate and we'd stay outside until we couldn't feel our fingers. She smiled at the memory. I haven't built a snowman in 20 years. Lily would love to build one with you. Yeah? Yeah. She takes snowmen very seriously, has specific architectural requirements. Victoria turned to look at him. Can I come over tomorrow, spend the day with you guys, build snowmen and drink hot chocolate and just exist, without thinking about work or the board or any of it? Of course. Thank you. She hesitated, then said, Ethan? Yeah? I'm really glad you brought me home that night. I'm glad you didn't leave me alone. Me too. She stepped forward and hugged him. Not the brief, awkward hug from her office. A real hug, the kind that said she needed the contact, the connection, the reminder that she wasn't alone. Ethan hugged her back, feeling the tension in her shoulders, the way she was holding on to him like he might disappear. They stood there for a long moment, snow falling around them, the city quiet in that way it only gets during a snowstorm. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were wet. I should go. Let you get back to Lily. Drive safe. I will. He watched her walk to her car, get in, drive away into the snow. Then he headed home, his mind full of too many thoughts to process. Mrs. Chen met him at the door when he came to pick up Lily. How was the party? Interesting. And Victoria? Ethan paused. How did you know? I'm old, not blind. I see how you look at her, how she looks at you. Mrs. Chen smiled. It's good. You deserve someone. Lily deserves a family. It's not like that. We're just friends. For now. She patted his arm. But things change. And when they do, don't be afraid. Life's too short to waste being scared. Lily was half asleep on Mrs. Chen's couch, curled up with her rabbit. Ethan carried her to the car, buckled her in, and drove home through the snow. She woke up as he was carrying her inside. Did you have fun at the party? She mumbled. It was okay. Is Victoria okay? She will be. Good. Lily yawned. She's coming over tomorrow, right? For snowmen? How did you know that? Because she needs us, Dad. And we need her too, even if you don't know it yet. Ethan got her into bed, pulled the covers up, kissed her forehead. You're too smart for your own good. I know. She smiled sleepily. Love you. Love you too, sweetheart. In his own room, Ethan lay in the dark thinking about everything. About Victoria breaking down, admitting she was scared, about the executives plotting against her, about the choice she might have to make between her career and the life she was starting to build with him and Lily. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. I made it home. Thank you for tonight, for defending me, for being you. He typed back. Thank you for trusting me enough to fall apart. That takes courage. Her response came quickly. I've never been brave. I've just been good at pretending. Then maybe it's time to stop pretending. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. Maybe. But I don't know how to be anything else. Ethan stared at that message for a long time before responding. You do. You're already doing it. Every time you show up at my door, every time you play with Lily, every time you choose connection over control. You're already being brave. You just don't recognize it yet. The response took longer this time. I hope you're right, because I'm terrified of losing this, of losing you and Lily, of going back to being alone. You won't lose us. I promise. You can't promise that. She was right. He couldn't. Life didn't work that way. But he typed the words anyway because sometimes people needed to hear them even if they weren't guaranteed. I'm promising anyway. Sleep well, Victoria. Good night, Ethan. He set the phone down and lay there listening to the silence of his apartment, to the distant sound of Lily breathing in the next room, to the heater cycling on and off. This life he'd built, careful, controlled, safe, was changing. The walls he'd constructed after Sarah died were coming down whether he was ready or not. And the terrifying part wasn't that Victoria was breaking through them. It was that he was letting her, that some part of him wanted her to. The next morning, Victoria arrived at 10 with her hair in a ponytail and wearing a jacket that looked like it had never seen actual weather. Lily took one look at her and declared they needed to go shopping for proper snow gear before any snowman construction could begin. They ended up at a sporting goods store, Lily acting as Victoria's personal stylist, pulling jackets and gloves and hats off racks with the authority of someone who knew exactly what was needed. Victoria tried on everything Lily handed her, patient and amused, and ended up buying gear that cost more than Ethan's monthly grocery budget. "I look ridiculous," Victoria said, examining herself in the store mirror. "You look ready for snow," Lily corrected. "There's a difference." Back at the apartment, they spent 2 hours in the courtyard building snowmen. Lily directed operations, specifying exactly how big each section should be, where the arms should go, what kind of face each snowman needed. Victoria followed instructions like she was in a board meeting, taking it seriously, committed to getting it right. Ethan watched them work, Victoria's expensive jacket already covered in snow, Lily's laughter echoing across the courtyard. Other kids had come out to play, and Lily recruited them all, building an entire snow family, complete with backstories and dramatic tensions. "The dad snowman is sad because the mom snowman is gone," Lily explained to Victoria, arranging sticks for arms. "But the kid snowman is helping him feel better, and now there's a new snowman who's teaching them both how to be happy again." Victoria glanced at Ethan, something unreadable in her expression. "That's a good story." "It's the best story," Lily said confidently, "because everyone gets to be happy at the end." Later, inside with hot chocolate, they sat around the kitchen table, hands wrapped around mugs, snow melting in puddles near the door. Lily was explaining the complex social dynamics of her second-grade class, Victoria listening like it was the most important briefing she'd ever received. "Marcus said his mom says you're Dad's girlfriend," Lily said suddenly. Ethan nearly choked on his hot chocolate. "Oh," Victoria said carefully. "What did you say?" "I said you're our friend, that you come over and we build forts and eat pizza and build snowmen, and Marcus said that's what girlfriends do." Lily tilted her head. "Is he right?" Victoria looked at Ethan, who was absolutely no help. "I guess it depends on how you define girlfriend." "Do you love my dad?" "Lily," Ethan started. "It's okay," Victoria said. She turned back to Lily, her expression serious. "I care about your dad very much. And I care about you. I don't know if that's the same as being a girlfriend, but I know I like being here with you both. That when I'm here, I feel like I belong somewhere. Does that make sense?" Lily considered this with her trademark gravity. "Yeah, that makes sense." She took a sip of hot chocolate. "I think you should be my dad's girlfriend, because he's been sad for a long time, and you make him less sad." "Sweetheart," Ethan said gently, "it's more complicated than that." "Why?" "Because adults make everything complicated," Victoria said, smiling slightly. "But I'm working on that." After Lily went to her room to play, Ethan and Victoria sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Victoria said, "I'm sorry about that. She's very direct." "That's putting it mildly. For what it's worth, she's not wrong. You do make me less sad." Victoria stared into her mug. "I went to the board meeting yesterday, before the party. They asked me about the policy changes, about whether my judgment was compromised, about you." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What did you say?" "I told them the truth, that I had been operating without empathy for years, that I'd built a company culture that was efficient but toxic, that I realized I needed to change, and that yes, someone made me see that. But it wasn't a compromise of judgment, it was a correction of it." "How did they respond?" "They're watching, waiting to see if the changes improve retention and productivity. If they don't, I'm out. They gave me until the end of Q1. 3 months to prove that treating people like humans doesn't destroy a company." "That's not a lot of time." "No, it's not." Victoria set her mug down. "But it's what I have, so I'm going to make it count. What can I do to help?" She looked at him, something vulnerable in her eyes. "Keep being you. Keep showing me what real looks like. She stopped. "Keep letting me be part of this, whatever this is. This is friendship. Maybe more. Still figuring it out. I like the figuring out part. It's terrifying, but I like it. They sat there as the afternoon light faded, Lily's voice drifting from her room as she played, the apartment warm and quiet around them. This wasn't a resolution, wasn't an ending, just a moment of peace in the middle of everything complicated and uncertain. But sometimes, Ethan thought, that's all you could ask for. A moment, a breath, a chance to believe that maybe things would work out, even if you couldn't see how yet. Victoria stayed for dinner, stayed until Lily fell asleep on the couch between them while they watched a movie. Stayed until it was late and the snow had stopped and the world outside looked clean and new. At the door, she turned back. Ethan? Yeah? I meant what I said earlier about being terrified of losing this, but I think I'm more terrified of never having tried, of going back to being the person I was before that night you brought me here. You're not that person anymore. I hope not. She smiled. See you next week? Count on it. After she left, Ethan carried Lily to bed and stood in her doorway, watching her sleep. This life they'd built, him and Lily, it was good, safe, but it was also small, contained. And maybe it was time to let it be bigger, let someone else in, take the risk that Mrs. Chen had talked about. He thought about Victoria standing in the snow, admitting she was scared, about her sitting on his kitchen floor eating donuts, about her crawling into blanket forts and building snowmen and asking questions like the answers mattered. He thought about Sarah and what she would say. She'd tell him to stop overthinking, to take the chance, to let himself feel something other than grief and responsibility. For the first time in 3 years, Ethan thought maybe he could. Maybe he was ready. Maybe the door he'd closed after Sarah died could open again, not to replace her, never to replace her, but to let someone new in, someone who needed him as much as he was starting to realize he needed her. The question was whether Victoria could do the same, whether she could choose this fragile, imperfect connection over the armor she'd worn for years, whether she was brave enough to risk everything for something real. Only time would tell. But for now, in this moment, with snow melting outside and his daughter sleeping and the memory of Victoria's smile still fresh in his mind, Ethan allowed himself to hope. And hope, he was learning, was its own kind of courage. January came in cold and unforgiving, the kind of month that made you question why anyone chose to live somewhere with real winter. Ethan scraped ice off his windshield every morning, drove Lily to school through gray slush, and watched the days blur together in a rhythm that should have felt familiar, but somehow didn't anymore. Victoria was working insane hours, trying to prove to the board that her changes were working. She'd text late at night, short messages that said she was still at the office, that the data was promising but not conclusive, that she was exhausted but couldn't stop now. Ethan would respond with encouragement, with reminders to eat and sleep, with photos of Lily that he hoped would make her smile. They hadn't seen each other in person in 2 weeks. It was the longest stretch since that first night, and the absence felt wrong, like something that had become essential was suddenly missing. Then, on a Tuesday morning in mid-January, Ethan got called to Victoria's office. The message came through the maintenance work order system, marked urgent. His stomach dropped. Urgent meant something was broken. And he had a feeling it wasn't the thermostat. He took the elevator to the executive floor, walked past assistants who wouldn't meet his eyes, and knocked on Victoria's door. "Come in." She was standing at the window, her back to him, shoulders rigid. The office looked like a war zone, papers everywhere, coffee cups covering every surface, her jacket thrown over a chair like she'd been there all night. "Victoria?" She didn't turn around. "Close the door." He did, and the click of the latch felt final. "The board met this morning," she said, her voice flat. "Early meeting, surprise meeting. They presented their concerns about my leadership, about the policy changes, about you." Ethan's chest tightened. What did they say? That I'm emotionally compromised, that my judgment is impaired, that the changes I've made are too expensive and haven't shown enough return yet to justify the cost. She finally turned around and her face was composed, but her eyes were devastated. "They gave me an ultimatum." "What kind of ultimatum?" "Step down voluntarily by the end of the month, or they'll vote to remove me. Either way, I'm out." The words hit like a physical blow. Ethan moved closer, trying to read her expression. They can't do that. The changes are working. Retention is up, productivity is stable, employee satisfaction is an intangible they don't care about. They care about quarterly profits, and Q4 was down 3% because of the increased costs. Victoria laughed, but it was bitter. 3%. That's all it took for them to decide I'm a liability. So fight back. Show them the long-term projections. Show them, I did. They don't care. She moved to her desk, leaning against it like she needed the support. David Chen led the charge, presented a whole case about how I've lost focus, how I'm making decisions based on personal feelings instead of business strategy. He had charts, Ethan, graphs showing the correlation between when you and I started. She stopped, frustrated. When we started spending time together and when my decision-making allegedly became erratic. That's insane. That's corporate politics. Victoria rubbed her face with both hands. And the worst part is, they're not entirely wrong. I did make those changes because of you, because you showed me a different way to live, to lead, to be human. So yeah, my judgment was influenced by personal feelings, but I thought that made me better, not worse. Ethan felt something crack in his chest. This is my fault. No, don't do that. Don't make this about guilt. But if you hadn't met me, then I'd still be miserable, still be alone, still be running a company where people were afraid of me instead of working with me. She looked at him directly. You gave me something I didn't know I needed, and I'm not sorry about that, even if it costs me everything. There has to be another option, something we're not seeing. There isn't. I've been going through scenarios all night. Every path ends the same way. I'm out. They stood in silence, the weight of it settling between them. Outside, the city continued its relentless motion, people going to work, living their lives, unaware that something was breaking in this room. What are you going to do? Ethan asked finally. I don't know. Victoria's voice was small, uncertain in a way he'd never heard before. I've been CEO for 6 years. Before that, I was VP for 4. This company has been my entire adult life. Without it, I don't know who I am. You're Victoria, the woman who reads bedtime stories to 7-year-olds, who builds snowmen and eats pizza and asks questions like the answers matter. The company doesn't define you, doesn't it? I built my whole identity around this, around being successful and powerful and in control. Take that away, and what's left? Ethan moved closer, close enough to see the exhaustion in her face, the fear she was trying so hard to hide. A person, a real person who deserves to be happy, who deserves connection and love and all the things you've been denying yourself. I don't know how to be just a person. I don't know how to exist without the job, without the title, without... Her voice broke. I'm terrified, Ethan, of losing everything, of having to start over, of being nobody. You're not nobody. You never were. She looked at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. What if I made the wrong choice? What if I traded everything I built for something that isn't even real? What if... Ethan cut her off by pulling her into a hug. She resisted for half a second, then collapsed against him, her carefully constructed composure finally breaking. She didn't cry loudly, just shook silently, breathing in gasps, holding on to him like he was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly become unstable. It's real, he said quietly into her hair. Whatever this is between us, it's real. And it's worth more than any job or title or corner office. How do you know? Because I've lost something that mattered. I've been through the worst thing that can happen to a person. And I learned that the only things that matter are the people you love and who love you back. Everything else is just noise. Victoria pulled back slightly, looking up at him. Do you love me? The question hung in the air. Ethan realized he'd been avoiding thinking about it, avoiding putting words to what he felt because words made it real, and real meant vulnerable, and vulnerable meant the possibility of loss all over again. But looking at her now, broken and afraid and still somehow brave enough to ask, he couldn't avoid it anymore. Yeah, he said. I think I do. I think I have for a while. She searched his face. Even though it's complicated, even though I'm a mess, even though being with me might mean dealing with all of this corporate drama? Especially because of all that. Because you're real. Because you're trying. Because when I'm with you, I feel like maybe it's okay to be something other than just Lily's dad. Maybe it's okay to want something for myself again." Victoria kissed him. It wasn't planned or smooth or like the movies. She just leaned up and pressed her lips to his, desperate and clumsy and absolutely perfect. Ethan kissed her back, one hand coming up to cup her face, feeling the wetness of tears on her cheeks. When they broke apart, she was smiling through the tears. "I don't know what I'm doing." "Neither do I." "We're terrible at this." "Probably." She laughed, and it sounded genuine this time. "What happens now?" "Now you figure out what you want. Not what the board wants. Not what David Chen wants. What you want." "I want this. You and Lily. A life that feels real instead of performed." "Then take it. Choose it. Let the company go and build something new." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" Victoria pulled away, pacing to the window again. "Because walking away means admitting defeat. It means Chen wins. It means everything I worked for was for nothing." "It wasn't for nothing. You built something. You changed things. You proved that caring about people doesn't make you weak. The fact that they're forcing you out doesn't erase that." "Doesn't it? If the changes get reversed the second I'm gone, what was the point?" Ethan thought about that. About legacy and impact and what mattered in the long run. "The point is that you tried. That you showed people there's another way. Maybe the next CEO will remember that. Maybe some of the employees will carry it forward. Change doesn't happen all at once. Sometimes you just plant seeds and hope they grow." Victoria stared out at the city, silent. Finally, she said, "I need to think. I need time to figure out what I'm going to do." "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." She turned back to him. "Promise?" "Promise." The next week was brutal. Victoria was barely reachable, dealing with lawyers and board members and the logistics of potentially stepping down. Ethan kept working, kept taking care of Lily, kept his phone close in case Victoria needed him. The gossip at work was worse than ever. Everyone knew something was happening, but nobody knew exactly what. Rumors ranged from Victoria being fired to her having a nervous breakdown to her running away with the maintenance guy, that last one courtesy of someone who'd apparently seen them in the parking garage. Martinez pulled Ethan aside on Thursday. "You okay, man?" "Define okay." "Fair." Martinez glanced around to make sure they were alone. "Look, I don't know what's going on with you and Victoria. Don't need to know. But whatever it is, be careful. People are watching, and not everyone wishes you well." "I know." "Do you?" "Because David Chen's been asking questions. About how long you've known Victoria, about whether there's anything inappropriate, about whether maybe you've been getting special treatment." Martinez's expression was serious. "He's building a case. Not just against her. Against you, too." Ethan felt cold. "What kind of case?" "The kind that ends with you getting fired for fraternizing with executives, or for creating a hostile work environment, or for whatever else he can make stick." Martinez put a hand on his shoulder. "I'm telling you this as a friend. Watch your back." That night, Ethan told Victoria what Martinez had said. They were on the phone, her voice exhausted and distant. "I'll handle Chen," she said. "How?" "I don't know yet. But I won't let him come after you. This is my mess. You shouldn't suffer for it. We're in this together, remember?" "Are we?" She sounded uncertain. "Because right now it feels like I'm dragging you down with me. Like maybe you'd be better off if you'd never brought me home that night." "Don't say that." "Why not? It's true. Your life was fine before me. Stable. Safe. Now you're dealing with corporate politics and gossip and the possibility of losing your job. All because you were nice to the wrong person." "You're not the wrong person." "How do you know?" Ethan took a breath, trying to find the right words. "Because before you, I was just going through the motions. Working, taking care of Lily, existing. I told myself that was enough, that I didn't need anything else. But I was lying. I was lonely and tired and afraid to let anyone in because letting people in means risking loss." He paused. "You made me realize I was just surviving, not living. And yeah, it's complicated and messy, and maybe we're both going to get hurt. But at least we're feeling something. At least we're trying." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I miss you. I miss Lily. I miss feeling like I belong somewhere." "Then come over. Forget the board and the lawyers and all of it for one night. Just come over and be here with us." "I can't. I have a meeting with my attorney in an hour. And then I have to review the severance proposal they sent over. And then, Victoria, stop. What? Come over. The rest of it can wait. Another pause. Then, okay, give me an hour. She showed up 90 minutes later, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Lily took one look at her and declared they were having an emergency fortnight. No arguments, no negotiations. Fortnight was happening. They built it in the living room, bigger than ever before, using every blanket and pillow in the apartment. Lily appointed herself chief architect. Victoria was in charge of structural integrity, and Ethan handled snacks and lighting. Once inside, surrounded by fabric walls and the warm glow of flashlights, Lily said, "Okay, Fort rules. Everyone has to say one good thing that happened today." "I don't know if I have anything good," Victoria said quietly. "Then say something that didn't make you sad. That counts too." Victoria thought about it. "I gotta see you guys. That didn't make me sad." "Good. Dad, your turn." Ethan looked at Victoria, at Lily curled up between them, at this small protected space they'd created. "Same as Victoria. This, right here, this is the good thing." "Mine is that Victoria came over even though she's busy," Lily said, "because that means we're important to her." "You are," Victoria said immediately. "You're the most important thing in my life right now, both of you." They sat in silence for a while, just existing together. Eventually, Lily fell asleep, her head on Victoria's lap, rabbit clutched to her chest. Victoria stroked her hair absently, her expression distant. "I'm going to resign," she said quietly. "Officially. Tomorrow." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." She looked at him. "Because you're right, the job isn't worth losing this. And if I stay, if I fight, it's going to get uglier. Chen will come after you. The board will keep pushing, and eventually something's going to break that can't be fixed." "What will you do after?" "I have no idea. I've never not worked. Never not had a plan." She smiled slightly. "It's terrifying, but also kind of freeing. Like maybe I can figure out who I am without the job defining me." "You can, and I'll help you figure it out." "Why would you do that?" "Because I love you, and because you do the same for me." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I've never had someone say that to me before. Not like they meant it." "I mean it." She leaned over Lily's sleeping form and kissed him, soft and gentle and full of promise. When she pulled back, she was crying but also smiling. "I love you too," she whispered. "I didn't know that was something I could feel, but I do. I love you, and I love Lily, and I love this messy, complicated, imperfect life you've let me be part of." They sat there in the fort, Lily asleep between them, the outside world temporarily held at bay. Ethan thought about how much had changed since that night in December. How one decision to help someone had led to this, to love, to family, to the possibility of something new. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was real. And real, he was learning, was better than perfect any day. Victoria resigned the next day. Ethan didn't hear about it until Martinez told him that afternoon, everyone in the office buzzing with the news. The official statement said she was stepping down to pursue other opportunities, thanking the board for their support and wishing the company well. The unofficial story was that she'd walked into the boardroom, put her resignation letter on the table, and told David Chen exactly what she thought of him and his short-sighted, profit-obsessed leadership style. Then she'd cleaned out her office and left without saying goodbye to anyone. Ethan texted her immediately. "You okay?" The response came an hour later. "I'm free. Come over after work?" He'd never been to her penthouse. When he arrived that evening, he understood why she'd called it empty. It was massive and modern and completely impersonal, like a hotel room someone had been living in for years without ever making it a home. Victoria was sitting on the floor in the living room, surrounded by boxes, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt. She looked up when he walked in, and she was smiling. "I'm packing," she said, "getting rid of everything I don't need, which, it turns out, is most of it." Ethan sat down next to her. "Where are you going?" "I don't know yet. Somewhere smaller, somewhere that feels like an actual home instead of a showpiece." She picked up a corporate award from one of the boxes. "I'm keeping some things, the stuff that actually meant something, but the rest," she gestured at the piles around them, "the rest is just noise." "How do you feel?" Victoria thought about it. Terrified, relieved, excited. Like I just jumped off a cliff and I'm either going to fly or crash and I won't know which until I land. I vote for flying. Me too. She set the award aside. I have money saved, a lot of money actually. I don't need to work for a while, so I'm going to take time, figure out what I actually want to do with my life now that I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone. That sounds healthy. It sounds insane. I've never not had a plan, but maybe that's the point. Maybe I need to learn how to just exist without constantly achieving. Ethan looked around at the boxes, at this woman he'd come to love sitting on the floor of her expensive, empty apartment, dismantling the life she'd built. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you regret it? Any of it? Victoria met his eyes. No, not for a second. Yes, I lost my job. Yes, I have to start over. Yes, everything's uncertain and scary. But I'm also happier than I've been in years. I have you. I have Lily. I have something real. And that's worth more than any corner office or executive title. Good, because I'd feel really guilty if you regretted it, she laughed. No guilt allowed. We're both choosing this. Together. They spent the evening packing, talking, occasionally kissing when they got distracted from the work at hand. It felt domestic and normal and right, like this was what they were supposed to be doing all along. Around 9, Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at it, frowned, then answered. Hello? Ethan watched her expression change from confusion to surprise to something that might have been hope. Yes, I'm listening. A pause. That's very generous. Can I think about it? Another pause. Thank you. I'll be in touch. She hung up, staring at the phone like it might explode. What was that? Ethan asked. That was Patricia Morrison. She's on the board of directors at Clearwater Solutions. They're a smaller company, about 1,000 employees, focused on sustainable business practices and employee-centric policies. Victoria looked stunned. She said she's been following what happened at Hale, that she thinks my approach is exactly what their company needs. She wants to meet about a CEO position. That's amazing. It's insane. I resigned 12 hours ago. How does she even know? Because word travels. And because what you did, standing up for your values, refusing to compromise, that matters to some people. Victoria sat down on the couch, still processing. I don't know if I want another CEO position. I don't know if I want to go back to that life. Then don't. Or do, but on your terms. Make it about building something that aligns with what you actually believe instead of what other people expect. Is that even possible? I don't know, but you won't find out unless you try. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Will you come with me? To the meeting. I know that's weird and inappropriate and probably not how these things work, but I don't want to do this alone. I don't want to go back to being the person who faces everything by herself. Of course I'll come. She smiled, genuine and warm. Thank you. The meeting with Patricia Morrison happened 3 days later in a coffee shop, not a boardroom. Patricia was in her 60s, sharp-eyed and direct, and she didn't waste time with pleasantries. I'll be honest, she said after they'd ordered. Your resignation made waves. A lot of people think you threw away your career, but I see someone who had the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it cost them everything. That's the kind of leader we need. Victoria glanced at Ethan, who gave her an encouraging nod. What exactly are you looking for? Someone who can transform our company culture. We're profitable, stable, but we're losing good people because they don't feel valued. I want someone who understands that employees are people first, resources second. Someone who's willing to invest in culture even if it means short-term costs. Patricia leaned forward. From what I saw at Hale, that's exactly what you were trying to do. You just had a board that didn't understand the long-term value. And your board is different? Our board is smaller, more progressive, more willing to take risks if the payoff is a sustainable, ethical company culture. Patricia smiled. I won't lie to you. It won't be easy. There will be resistance, but I think you can do it, and I think you want to. Victoria looked at Ethan again. He could see the conflict in her eyes, the fear of going back to the corporate world, balanced against the opportunity to actually do it right this time. Can I have some time to think about it? Victoria asked. Take a week, but I need an answer soon. We're interviewing other candidates. After Patricia left, Ethan and Victoria sat in silence. Finally, Victoria said, "What do you think?" "I think it's your decision, but I think you'd be amazing at it. And I think you'd never forgive yourself if you didn't try." "What if it goes wrong again? What if I fail?" "Then you fail, and you try something else. But at least you'll know you took the chance." Victoria took his hand across the table. "Will you be there? Through all of it? The success and the failure and everything in between?" "Yes. Even though it means being with someone who works too much and second-guesses everything and has no idea what she's doing in a relationship? Especially because of that, we'll figure it out together." Victoria accepted the position a week later. The news spread through the industry. The disgraced CEO who'd resigned in shame was getting a second chance at a smaller company, bringing her controversial people-first policies with her. Some people were skeptical, some people were curious, and some people, like Martinez, texted Ethan to say they were rooting for her. Things moved fast after that. Victoria sold the penthouse, moved into an apartment closer to Ethan's neighborhood. Nothing fancy, just a place that felt like it could actually be lived in. She started at Clearwater in early February, implementing changes carefully this time, bringing people along instead of forcing things through. And through it all, she and Ethan built something that looked a lot like a relationship. They had dinner together most nights, either at his place or hers. Victoria came to all of Lily's school events. She learned to cook, badly, but with enthusiasm. She and Lily built elaborate blanket forts and argued about the correct structural approach. She became part of their routine, their life, their family. It wasn't perfect. There were fights about work-life balance, about Victoria's tendency to overwork, about Ethan's tendency to avoid conflict. There were moments when the ghosts of their past lives intruded. Victoria's fear of failure, Ethan's fear of loss. But they worked through it. They talked. They compromised. They showed up for each other even when it was hard. 3 months after Victoria started at Clearwater, Ethan came home from work to find her and Lily sitting at his kitchen table, looking conspiratorial. "What's going on?" he asked suspiciously. "We have a question," Lily said, barely containing her excitement. "Okay." Victoria took a breath. "So, I've been thinking about the future, about what I want my life to look like." She glanced at Lily, who nodded encouragingly. "And I realized that everything I want is already here, in this apartment, with you and Lily." Ethan's heart started beating faster. "What I'm trying to say is—" Victoria stopped, frustrated with herself. "I'm terrible at this. Lily, help me out." Lily grinned. "Victoria wants to know if she can be part of our family, like officially. Like move in and be here all the time, and maybe someday be my stepmom." Ethan looked at Victoria, who'd turned red. "Is that accurate?" "Yes? Maybe. I don't know what the protocol is for asking if you can basically move in with your boyfriend and his daughter, but that's what I'm asking." She was talking too fast, nervous. "I know it's fast. I know we've only been together a few months. But I spend most of my time here anyway, and my apartment is just where I sleep, and I want to be here. With you, if that's okay. If it's not too much or too soon or—" Ethan kissed her, cutting off the rambling. When he pulled back, he was smiling. "Yes. Move in. Be part of this family. Stay." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Really? Really?" Lily cheered, jumping up from her chair. "I told you he'd say yes. Now we can build forts all the time." They moved Victoria's things in over the next 2 weeks. It was chaotic and disorganized and involved a lot of arguing about where things should go and whether they needed 3 sets of dishes. But eventually, the apartment transformed from Ethan and Lily's space into something that belonged to all 3 of them. Victoria's corporate awards ended up in a box in the closet. Her expensive furniture was sold or donated. But the small things found places. Her books on the shelves next to Ethan's, her jacket on the hook by the door, her coffee mug in the cabinet. Evidence that she lived here, that she belonged. One night, after Lily was asleep and they were cleaning up from dinner, Victoria said, "I never thought I'd have this." "Have what?" "A home, a family. People who care about me, not because of what I can do for them, but just because I'm me." She set down the dish she was drying. "I spent so long thinking I didn't need it, that it was a weakness. But I was wrong. This is the strongest I've ever felt." Ethan pulled her into a hug. "You make us stronger too, all 3 of us. Even when I'm a mess, Even when I work too late and forget to eat and have panic attacks about whether I'm doing things right? Especially then, because you're trying, because you care, because you show up even when it's hard. Victoria pulled back to look at him. I love you. I don't say it enough, but I do. I love you and I love Lily and I love this life we're building. I love you too, and we're going to keep building it, together, for as long as you'll have us. Forever then. I'm thinking forever. Ethan kissed her, soft and sure, in the kitchen of the apartment that was now theirs. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent and endless. But in here, in this small space filled with blanket forts and drawings on the fridge, and evidence of 3 lives becoming one, everything felt exactly right. 6 months later, on a Saturday morning in August, Ethan woke to find Lily and Victoria conspiring in the kitchen. They were whispering, giggling, clearly planning something. Should I be worried? He asked from the doorway. Both of them jumped. Victoria looked guilty. Lily looked triumphant. We made you breakfast, Lily announced. And it's special. Special how? You have to see. They'd made pancakes, arranged on a plate to spell out a message. It took Ethan a moment to decipher the syrup-dripping letters. Marry her. He looked up at Victoria, who was standing next to Lily, looking nervous and hopeful and absolutely terrified. This was her idea, Victoria said quickly, gesturing to Lily. But I agreed. Obviously. If you want to, no pressure, we can wait. Or not do it at all. Whatever you want. Lily rolled her eyes. She's been practicing that speech for 3 days, and it's still bad. What she means is she wants to marry you, and I want her to be my stepmom officially, so we made pancakes. Ethan looked at both of them, Lily bouncing on her toes, Victoria trying to look calm but failing completely. His daughter and the woman he loved standing in his kitchen, asking him to make them a permanent family. Yes, he said. Obviously, yes. Lily screamed and jumped into his arms. Victoria just stood there, tears streaming down her face, laughing and crying at the same time. Really? She asked. Really? Did you think I'd say no? I thought you might think it was too fast, or too complicated, or… Ethan kissed her, cutting off the worry. It's not too fast, it's not too complicated, it's just right. They got married in October, small ceremony at the courthouse with Lily as the witness and Mrs. Chen taking photos. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just 3 people becoming officially what they'd already been for months. A family. After the ceremony, they went to Marco's for pizza. Same booth where they'd sat that first time, when Lily had told Victoria she could be their friend. Now Victoria was wearing a simple ring that Ethan had picked out with Lily's help, and Lily was wearing a matching one that Victoria had given her, a symbol that she was part of this too. So, Lily said through a mouthful of pepperoni, now that you're married, can we get a dog? Victoria and Ethan looked at each other. Absolutely not, they said in unison. Lily grinned. Worth a shot. Later, at home in their apartment, after Lily was asleep and the day's excitement had settled, Ethan and Victoria lay in bed talking about the future. What do you think happens now? Victoria asked. I don't know. We keep building, keep showing up, keep figuring it out as we go. That doesn't scare you? Terrifies me. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. Victoria turned to face him. Do you ever think about that night, the one where this all started? All the time. Do you think you made the right choice, bringing me home instead of leaving me alone? Ethan thought about everything that had happened since then. The complications, the gossip, the fear and uncertainty. Victoria losing her job. Him nearly losing his. The fights and the doubts and all the messy, imperfect reality of building a life together. He thought about Lily, asleep down the hall, with 2 parents now instead of 1. About Victoria, who smiled more than she frowned and knew how to build structurally sound blanket forts. About the small moments of happiness they'd created together. Breakfast at the kitchen table, movie nights on the couch, walks through the park where all 3 of them held hands. Yeah, he said. I think I did. Victoria smiled. The real smile she saved for when it was just them. When she didn't have to perform or pretend or be anything other than herself. Me too, she said. Best mistake I ever made, getting drunk at that holiday party. Best decision I ever made, not leaving you there. They fell asleep like that, tangled together in the dark, while outside the city moved on, and inside their small apartment a new family slept peacefully, built from broken pieces that had somehow found a way to fit together. It wasn't the ending either of them had planned, but it was the ending they'd chosen. And sometimes, the best stories aren't the ones you plan. They're the ones that find you when you're least expecting it, when you're brave enough to take a chance on someone who needs you as much as you need them. Sometimes all it takes is one unexpected night, one decision to help instead of walk away, one moment of courage in the face of fear. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that's enough to change everything. For Ethan and Victoria and Lily, it was more than enough. It was everything.